It was a quiet evening, the kind where the world seems to slow down just enough to allow you a moment of peace. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over our backyard. I was standing by the window, lost in thought, when I heard the front door creak open. My daughter Athena had come home for the weekend, a rare occurrence these days. She was 22 now, no longer the girl who used to follow me around the house, asking endless questions about life, but a lady, strong, confident, and at times distant in a way that I couldn't quite grasp. Time had changed her, and while I tried to adapt to this new version of my daughter, it wasn't always easy. Our relationship had evolved, and though I cherished every moment we spent together, something about this weekend felt different. There was a tension in the air, an unspoken weight that neither of us could ignore. "Hey, Mom!" Athena called out, her voice deeper than I remembered, a reminder of how much she had grown. "I'm back." I turned to greet her, a smile on my face as I walked toward the living room. "Glad you made it home safe, daughter," I said, clapping her on the shoulder. The warmth of the moment hung between us, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something that made me pause. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, talking about work, her studies, how things had been since the last time we saw each other. But there was something in the way she looked at me, a subtle intensity that I hadn't noticed before. It made me feel unsettled, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. I brushed it off as exhaustion from a long week, convincing myself that everything was fine. Later that evening, we sat down for dinner. The conversation flowed easily at first, like it always did when we were catching up after time apart. But then, as we ate, I noticed it again. That lingering gaze, the way her eyes held mine a second too long. I pushed the thought aside, but a small part of me couldn't help but wonder if I was imagining things. Surely, I was just overthinking it. After dinner, we settled into the living room to watch a movie, just like we used to do when she was younger. It had been our tradition, something that made our bond feel stronger, even when life had pulled us in different directions. The dim light from the TV flickered across the room, casting shadows on the walls as we sat side by side on the couch. But the comfort I usually felt in these moments was clouded by something else. As the movie played, I found myself glancing at Athena, noticing how much she had changed since the last time we did this. She wasn't the girl who used to fall asleep halfway through the film, curled up beside me. She was a lady now, with her own thoughts, her own life. But there was something about the way she shifted closer to me on the couch, something that made my heart skip a beat. And then it happened. Her hand brushed against mine, just for a second. It was innocent enough, but the spark that shot through me was undeniable. I pulled my hand away quickly, hoping she didn't notice the sudden tension in the air. "Everything okay, Mom?" she asked, her voice low and concerned, eyes flicking toward mine with that same intensity I had been trying to ignore all evening. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just tired, I guess." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Something had shifted between us, something I wasn't sure how to handle. We finished the movie in silence, neither of us paying much attention to the screen anymore. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words that neither of us dared to voice. When the credits finally rolled, I stood up quickly, eager to put some distance between us. "I think I'll head to bed," I said, my voice sounding more strained than I intended. "It's been a long day." Athena nodded but didn't say anything as I made my way toward the stairs. As I lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, my mind raced with thoughts I couldn't push away. The touch of her hand lingered on my skin, a reminder that something had changed between us. But what it was, I couldn't yet name. The next morning, I woke early, hoping to shake off the strange unease that had settled over me. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, that I was reading too much into a simple moment. Athena was my daughter, and that was all. There was nothing more to it. When I came downstairs, she was already sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. She greeted me with a smile, easy and relaxed, as if nothing had happened. Maybe I really had imagined it all. "Morning, Mom," she said, glancing up at me. "I was thinking of going for a drive later. Wanna come?" A drive? It had been years since we had gone on one of our spontaneous road trips together. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure if spending more time alone with her was the best idea after the strange tension of the night before. But I quickly reminded myself, this was just a mother and daughter spending time together. There was nothing unusual about that. "Yeah, that sounds good," I replied, trying to keep my voice casual. Later that afternoon, we set off in the car, the wind whipping through the open windows as we drove through the familiar countryside. The tension I had felt on the night before seemed to ease, replaced by the comfortable rhythm of our conversation. We talked about everything and nothing, the way we always had, and for a while, I allowed myself to believe that whatever strange feelings had arisen the night before had been nothing more than a fleeting moment. But then, as we rounded a quiet bend in the road, Athena glanced over at me, her expression suddenly serious. "Mom," she said softly, "there's something I've been wanting to tell you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and foreboding. I felt my stomach twist in a way I hadn't expected. There was more to this weekend than I had realized. And whatever it was, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. For a moment, the only sound in the car was the soft hum of the engine and the wind rushing past the windows. I glanced at Athena, her face serious, eyes fixed on the road ahead, but I could see the tension in her jaw. Whatever she was about to say, I could tell it weighed on her heavily. "What is it, daughter?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light, but my heart was racing. She hesitated, fingers gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I could see the struggle in her, the way she was battling with whatever was on her mind. My mind raced with possibilities, but nothing could prepare me for what she said next. "Mom, I've been hiding something from you, and I don't know how to say this, but I have to. I can't keep it in anymore." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. "Athena, whatever it is, you can tell me. You know that." She glanced at me, and for the briefest second, I saw something vulnerable in her eyes, something raw. Then she looked back at the road and took a deep breath. "I think I'm in love," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by confusion. Love? That wasn't what I had expected. But before I could say anything, she continued. "It's not just that, though," she added quickly, her words coming out in a rush. "It's not normal. I've tried to push it away, tried to pretend it wasn't there, but I can't anymore." I frowned, not understanding where this was going. "What do you mean it's not normal?" "Love is love, Athena. There's nothing wrong with being in love." She shook her head, biting her lip. "Mom, it's not that simple. It's you." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, heavy and suffocating. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I couldn't process what she had just said. "What?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice barely audible. She pulled the car over to the side of the road, turning off the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at her, my mind racing to catch up with the weight of her confession. She didn't look at me, her hands still gripping the steering wheel as if it was the only thing grounding her in that moment. "I'm in love with you," she repeated, her voice trembling now. I've tried to fight it, tried to pretend it wasn't there, but I can't. I don't know when it started, but I've been feeling this way for a while now. And I know it's wrong. I know it is. But I can't help it. My mind reeled. This couldn't be happening. Athena was my daughter, my flesh and blood. This wasn't supposed to happen. It couldn't. I opened my mouth to say something. Anything. But no words came out. My heart pounded in my chest, my pulse racing in my ears. Athena, I finally said, my voice shaky. You don't mean that. You're confused. This isn't... I'm not confused, she interrupted, finally turning to look at me. Her eyes were filled with something I couldn't name, a mix of fear, longing, and desperation. I've thought about this for months, and it's not going away. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop feeling this way. I stared at her, my mind scrambling to make sense of what was happening. How could this be real? How could my daughter be telling me something like this? Athena, I said again, my voice firmer now. You have to understand this isn't right. You're my daughter, we can't have those kinds of feelings for each other. She looked down, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I know, she whispered. I know it's wrong, but I don't know how to stop. I don't know what to do anymore. My heart ached as I looked at her, so clearly torn apart by the weight of her feelings. A part of me wanted to reach out to her, to comfort her like I had always done when she was a child, but I couldn't. Not this time. This was too far, too dangerous. I had to protect her, from herself, from whatever twisted emotions had led us here. We'll figure this out, I said quietly, though I had no idea how. But we can't act on these feelings, Athena. You have to understand that. She nodded, though she didn't seem convinced. The tension in the car was suffocating, and I knew we couldn't stay there, sitting in silence any longer. Let's go home, I said softly, trying to ease the tension. We'll talk more later. She started the car again, but the drive back was quiet, the air thick with everything left unsaid. I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head, couldn't stop the rising tide of panic that threatened to overwhelm me. How had things gotten to this point? What had I done wrong? When we pulled into the driveway, I was the first to get out, eager to put some distance between us, if only for a moment. But Athena lingered in the car, her head resting on the steering wheel. I watched her for a second, unsure of what to do. Athena, I called out, and she slowly lifted her head to look at me. Just give me a minute, Mom, she said quietly. I'll be inside soon. I nodded, not wanting to push her further. I headed inside, the familiar warmth of the house doing little to ease the growing storm inside me. As I walked through the hallway, my mind raced with 100 different thoughts, none of them bringing any clarity. I collapsed onto the couch, running a hand through my hair. What now? How did I handle this? My daughter had just confessed feelings for me that I couldn't even begin to process, and I had no idea what the right thing to do was. A few minutes later, I heard the door open and close softly. Athena walked into the living room, her face pale, her eyes downcast. I'm sorry, she said, standing by the door, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean to make things weird. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I looked at her, my heart aching for both of us. Athena, But before I could finish, she crossed the room and sat beside me, her hand reaching out to touch mine. Quick, before they catch us, Mom, she whispered, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. I know this isn't right, but I don't want to lose you. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as her hand lingered on mine. The world seemed to tilt, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do. But then reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. "No, Athena," I said, pulling my hand away gently, but firmly. "We can't. We're not crossing that line." She nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." "I know," I replied, my voice soft. "But we have to stop this now, before it gets any worse." The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Athena sat beside me, her hands still resting on the couch, fingers twitching as if they wanted to reach out again but hesitated. I could feel the weight of her unspoken emotions pressing against me, but I didn't know how to lift it, didn't know how to fix what had broken between us. I stood up abruptly, needing to move, to put some distance between us. "I'm going to make some tea," I said, my voice too loud, too sharp. I didn't wait for a response before heading to the kitchen. My hands shook as I filled the kettle with water, the sound of it pouring into the metal basin, louder than it should have been in the quiet house. What had just happened? What had I let happen? My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had crossed a line that should never have been crossed, and the worst part was that I didn't know how to undo it. The look in her eyes when she said she loved me, the way her hand had lingered just a little too long, it wasn't something I could pretend didn't happen. But what could I do about it now? The kettle hissed as it boiled, and I busied myself with finding mugs, anything to keep my hands occupied. But no matter how much I tried to focus on the task at hand, my thoughts kept circling back to Athena, her confession, and the desperation in her voice when she said she didn't want to lose me. As if that was ever a possibility. But I knew what she really meant. It wasn't about losing me as a mother. It was something more. Something I wasn't prepared to deal with. A few minutes later, I returned to the living room with 2 mugs of tea, setting one down on the coffee table in front of Athena. She looked up at me, her eyes still filled with that same vulnerability I had seen earlier. "Thanks," she muttered, taking the mug but not drinking from it. She just held it in her hands, as if the warmth from the tea was the only thing grounding her in that moment. I sat down across from her, putting more space between us this time. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew we couldn't avoid this conversation any longer, but I didn't know where to start. How do you talk to your own daughter about feelings that should never exist between a mother and her child? "I know you're sorry," I began slowly, choosing my words carefully. "And I know this is complicated for you, but I can't help how I feel," Athena interrupted, her voice shaking. "Mom, I've tried to push it away, but it's not going anywhere. I don't know what to do anymore." Her words hung in the air, and I felt my heart twist painfully in my chest. I wanted to tell her that it was all going to be okay, that we would figure this out together, but I didn't have the answers she needed. I didn't even know what the right thing to do was. "We'll figure it out," I said softly, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. "But we have to be careful, Athena. You understand that, right?" She nodded slowly, but her eyes were still clouded with emotion. "I know," she whispered, "but it doesn't make it any easier." I didn't know what to say to that. There was no easy solution to this, no way to make her feelings disappear. And I knew that pretending they didn't exist wasn't going to help either. But I had to keep reminding myself, she was my daughter, and that was all we could ever be to each other. No matter how much it hurt her, no matter how conflicted I felt, that was the line we couldn't cross. We sat there in silence for a while, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. The tea in my mug had gone cold, but I didn't move to drink it. I was too lost in my thoughts, too consumed by the weight of everything that had happened. Finally, Athena broke the silence. "Mom," he said quietly, I know this is hard for you too. I know it's not just me feeling whatever this is. I can see it in the way you look at me. I froze. She was right, of course, but I didn't want to admit it. I couldn't admit it. What kind of mother would I be if I did? The emotions swirling inside me were too complicated, too tangled to unravel in one conversation. But I couldn't let her think that this was okay. I'm your mother, I said, my voice firmer this time. That's all I can ever be. We have to move past this. Athena stared at me, her expression unreadable. And what if we can't? Her question cut through me like a knife. What if we couldn't? What if this tension, this unspoken thing between us never went away? I didn't have an answer for her. All I knew was that we couldn't keep going down this road. It was dangerous and it would destroy us both if we let it. We have to, I said firmly, standing up again, needing to move. We don't have a choice. Athena didn't say anything as I walked out of the room, my mind swirling with thoughts I didn't want to confront. I headed upstairs to my bedroom, closing the door behind me with a sense of finality. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling as I tried to make sense of everything that had just happened. I had to put distance between us, had to find a way to stop this before it went any further. But how? Athena was my daughter, and I loved her more than anything in the world, but not like this. I couldn't love her like this. But deep down, a part of me knew that it wasn't that simple. The way she had looked at me, the way her hand had brushed against mine, it wasn't something I could just forget. And that terrified me. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt a crushing sense of guilt wash over me. What kind of mother was I to let things get to this point? I should have seen the signs earlier, should have done something to stop this before it had a chance to grow. But now it was too late. The feelings were there, and no matter how much I wanted to deny them, they weren't going away. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread hanging over me. Athena was still in the house, and I knew we couldn't keep avoiding this conversation. But what more could I say? We were trapped in a situation with no easy way out. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes tired, as if she hadn't slept at all. "Morning," I said quietly, sitting down across from her. She nodded but didn't say anything. The tension between us was palpable, and I hated it. I hated the way things had changed between us, the way everything felt so wrong now. "I'm going to head back to school later today," Athena said after a long pause, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, my heart sinking. "Is that what you want?" She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "I don't know, but I think it's for the best. We both need some space." I couldn't argue with that. We did need space, but the thought of her leaving felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I didn't want her to go, but I knew it was the right thing to do. We needed time apart, time to process everything that had happened. "Okay," I said softly. "Maybe some distance will help." Athena nodded, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She stood up from the table and walked over to the door, pausing for a moment before turning back to look at me. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said quietly. "For everything." I shook my head. "It's not your fault, Athena." She gave me a small, sad smile before walking out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts once again. The house felt unbearably quiet after Athena left. The sound of the door closing behind her echoed through the empty hallways, a stark reminder that the space between us wasn't just physical. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the empty seat where she had been moments ago, my mind racing through everything that had transpired over the past few days. I had thought distance would bring clarity, but all it did was leave me more confused, more uncertain. How had we ended up here? How had things gotten so twisted between us? I had always been close with Athena, maybe too close. That was what worried me the most. Had I failed as a mother? Had I let my love for her blur the lines of our relationship? I pushed those thoughts aside, telling myself that this wasn't my fault. Athena was an adult, and she was responsible for her own emotions. But the guilt lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind, refusing to be silenced. For the next few days, I threw myself into work, into anything that could distract me from the suffocating weight of what had happened. But no matter how busy I tried to keep myself, I couldn't escape the memories. Her confession, the way her hand had lingered on mine, the look in her eyes when she said she loved me. It haunted me, and I knew I couldn't keep running from it. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and saw Athena's name flash across the screen. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to talk to her, but I knew I couldn't avoid this forever. "Hey, Athena," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom," she said, her voice soft, but there was something different about it this time. She didn't sound as vulnerable, as conflicted. "I just wanted to check in, see how you were doing." "I'm fine," I replied, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. "How about you? How's school?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she might not answer. But then she sighed. "It's been hard," she admitted. "I've been thinking about everything, about us. And I know I put you in a really difficult position. I'm sorry for that." Her words caught me off guard. I had expected her to push, to try and convince me that what she felt was real, but instead, she sounded resigned, like she had come to terms with something. "You don't have to apologize," I said quietly. "This is complicated. I don't know if there's an easy way to fix it." "I know," she replied, "but I've been talking to someone, a counselor, and it's helped me understand things a little better. I realize now that I was confused about a lot of things. You've always been there for me, Mom, in ways that no one else has, and I think I mistook that for something it wasn't." I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but it was tempered by sadness. She had been carrying so much, more than I had realized, and while I was glad she was getting help, I couldn't shake the feeling that this would leave a scar on our relationship. "I'm really proud of you, Athena," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "for talking to someone, for working through this. I just want you to be okay." "I will be," she replied, and for the first time in what felt like ages, there was a hint of hope in her voice. "It's going to take some time, but I think I'm getting there. I just needed to hear you say that you're still here for me, that we can move past this." "Of course, I'm still here," I said firmly. "You're my daughter, Athena. Nothing's going to change that. We'll get through this, one step at a time." The relief in her voice was palpable when she responded. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. I'll keep working on myself, and I think maybe, with time, we can figure out how to move forward." We talked for a little while longer, the conversation slowly easing back into something more comfortable, more familiar. It wasn't perfect. There was still a lot left unsaid, still a lot we needed to work through. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were heading in the right direction. When we finally said our goodbyes and hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone in my hand. The weight of the past few days had lessened, but it wasn't completely gone. I knew it would take time for us to heal, for things to go back to something resembling normal. But for the first time in a while, I felt hopeful that we could. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought back to the moments that had led us here. The awkward tension, the stolen glances, the unspoken feelings. It had been a storm of confusion for both of us, but in the midst of all that chaos, there had been something real, something deeper than the emotions that had clouded our judgment. It was love. Not the kind of love that Athena had thought she felt, but the kind of love that endures, that stands firm even in the face of confusion and mistakes. It was the love of a mother for her daughter, the kind of love that doesn't waver, no matter what. And I knew that in time, that love would guide us through this. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the distance between us began to close. We spoke more frequently, and each conversation felt easier than the last. Athena was making progress, both in her personal life and in her relationship with me. She had started to see a therapist regularly, and though it wasn't easy, she was beginning to untangle the emotions that had confused her for so long. As for me, I spent a lot of time reflecting on our relationship, on the boundaries that had been blurred, and the lessons I needed to learn as a mother. I knew now that I had to be more mindful, more aware of the way I navigated the complexities of our bond. It wasn't enough to just love my daughter. I had to be the parent she needed, even when it was difficult, even when it meant facing uncomfortable truths. One evening, a few months after that difficult conversation, Athena came home for the weekend. It was the first time we had seen each other in person since everything had happened, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But when she walked through the door, there was something different about her. She looked lighter, more at ease. "Hey, Mom," she said, smiling as she set her bag down by the door. "Hey, Athena," I replied, smiling back. "It's good to see you." We hugged, and for the first time in a long time, it felt normal, like the weight that had been between us was finally lifting. As we sat down to dinner that night, the conversation flowed easily, like it used to. The tension that had once filled the air between us was gone, replaced by something simpler, something more honest. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes, still times when the past threatened to resurface. But we were healing, both of us, and that was what mattered. By the end of the weekend, when Athena packed up to head back to school, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. As she hugged me goodbye, she looked at me with that same vulnerability I had seen before. But this time, it was different. "I love you, Mom," she said softly, but there was no confusion in her voice now, just love. "I love you too, daughter," I replied, my heart swelling with pride and relief. As I watched her drive away, I knew that we had made it through the storm. There were still challenges ahead, but I was confident that we would face them together, as mother and daughter,